It is November 1st, 1755, and the morning sun rises over Lisbon, the jewel of Europe. The streets hum with life as merchants open shops along the cobbled avenues below. Church bells ring across the 7 hills, calling the faithful to All Saints' Day Mass. Children chase through narrow alleys while bakers slide fresh bread from stone ovens. The scent of oranges and roasting chestnuts drifts on the cool autumn breeze. No one walking these streets knows that in minutes, this city will vanish from earth. This is the story of Lisbon's rise from conquest to catastrophe, from 1147 to 1755. 6 centuries of triumph and tragedy compressed into one unforgettable journey. In the year 1147, Lisbon was not Portuguese but a Moorish fortress called al-Ushbuna. White limestone walls towered 60 feet high, guarding narrow streets of Islamic design. Geometric tiles in blue and gold decorated every surface in intricate, beautiful patterns. Fountains cooled interior courtyards planted with orange trees and fragrant jasmine blooms. For 400 years, the Moors had ruled here, transforming a forgotten Roman outpost. Scholars in white robes debated astronomy and mathematics beneath graceful horseshoe arches. Merchants sold Saharan gold and Damascus steel in crowded, noisy, thriving marketplace souks. The city thrived as a vibrant center of Islamic culture, learning, and sophisticated commerce. But Christian forces were marching south through Iberia, reclaiming territory step by step. In October 1147, an army of Crusaders laid siege to the gleaming white fortress city. English, German, Flemish, and Norman warriors joined Portuguese King Afonso Henriques there. 13,000 men surrounded the walls with massive siege towers and heavy catapults. For 17 brutal weeks, catapults hurled stones at fortifications day and night. Each impact shook the earth and sent massive dust clouds billowing into the summer sky. Hunger gnawed at the 20,000 defenders trapped inside the besieged city walls. Wells ran dry under the relentless summer sun as food stocks dwindled to almost nothing. On October 25th, after months of bombardment, the eastern wall finally cracked and fell. Crusaders poured through the breach like an iron flood, swords raised and ready for blood. The Moorish governor, seeing the inevitable slaughter ahead, surrendered the city quickly. King Afonso I wasted no time transforming his hard-won prize into a grand royal capital. He rebuilt the shattered city as the beating heart of a new and ambitious Portuguese nation. Churches rose where mosques once stood, their bells replacing the ancient call to prayer. Portuguese nobles claimed the hilltop palaces with commanding views across the wide river. But Afonso proved wiser than most conquerors, showing unexpected tolerance and pragmatism. He allowed skilled Moorish craftsmen, architects, and merchants to remain in the city. Their knowledge of mathematics, navigation, and trade would prove essential for Portugal's future. The city began to breathe again, now facing west toward the endless Atlantic Ocean. By the early 1400s, Lisbon had transformed into Europe's gateway to the unknown world. Prince Henry the Navigator made it the undisputed center of bold, maritime exploration. Shipwrights hammered together revolutionary caravels in the Ribeira das Naus shipyards daily. Cartographers hunched over tables, drawing maps of uncharted waters and distant coastlines. Sailors gathered in riverside taverns, swapping wild stories of strange lands far beyond. Vasco da Gama left from these very docks in July 1497, seeking the sea route to India. 2 years later, he returned triumphant with ships groaning under pepper and cinnamon cargo. The cargo was worth 60 times what the entire dangerous voyage had cost the Portuguese crown. Lisbon exploded with sudden wealth overnight, transforming from port to mighty global powerhouse. The 1500s were Lisbon's true golden age of unprecedented prosperity and worldwide power. More gold, more silver, more ivory than any European city had ever witnessed before this time. Portuguese ships commanded the Indian Ocean from the Cape of Good Hope to distant Malacca. They controlled the entire lucrative spice trade from Goa to Macau to far-off Nagasaki. Sugar flowed in endless shiploads from Brazilian plantations to hungry European markets. The population swelled past 120,000 souls in hillside neighborhoods. Grand palaces of white limestone lined the riverfront like an elegant marble necklace. The Belém Tower rose at the river's mouth, a fortress monument to Portuguese naval power. King Manuel I commissioned the magnificent Jerónimos Monastery in elaborate Manueline style. Lisbon was the wealthiest, most cosmopolitan city in Europe, and everyone knew it well. But empires built on wooden ships can sink just as quickly as they rise to power. In the year 1580, catastrophe struck the Portuguese crown without any warning at all. Young King Sebastian died without heirs in a reckless crusade in the deserts of Morocco. His body was never recovered from the bloody battlefield of Alcácer Quibir that August. Spain's powerful King Philip II saw his chance to unite all Iberia under one crown forever. Spanish armies invaded from the east, and Philip claimed the Portuguese throne by sheer force. Portugal lost its hard-won independence after only 2 centuries as a sovereign nation-state. Spanish governors ruled from São Jorge Castle, while Portuguese nobles seethed with bitter anger. For 60 bitter years, Portugal chafed under humiliating foreign rule and deliberate neglect. In December 1640, Portugal finally struck back with carefully coordinated military fury. 40 conspirators stormed the Ribeira Palace and overthrew the Spanish viceroy violently. The Duke of Braganza, a reluctant nobleman, was proclaimed King João IV that very same day. Lisbon celebrated in the streets with bonfires, wine, and dancing that lasted for many days. But the city had been deeply wounded by decades of Spanish neglect and deliberate misrule. Yet Portugal still controlled resource-rich Brazil, and Brazilian gold would save everything. The early 1700s brought a second golden age, even brighter than the glorious First Age. Gold and diamonds poured from Brazilian mines in quantities that defied all human belief. King João V used this staggering wealth to remake Lisbon into a magnificent baroque masterpiece. He commissioned the Mafra Palace, a colossal monastery rivaling Versailles in scale and grandeur. Churches across Lisbon dripped with Brazilian gold leaf on every surface and sacred altar. The massive Águas Livres aqueduct brought fresh water across 18 kilometers of stone arches. Lisbon, in 1750, was a city of 300,000 people living in absolute luxury and splendor. November 1st, 1755 began like any other holy day in the Catholic calendar year. The sky stretched clear and blue above the terracotta rooftops of the hillside city below. Families dressed in their finest silk and velvet for the solemn All Saints' Day Mass ceremony. At exactly 9:40 in the morning, the ground began to shake violently without any warning. Not a minor tremor, but a violent convulsion from deep beneath the Earth's ancient crust. Buildings swayed like ships caught in a storm at sea, as roof tiles cascaded into streets. Stone walls that had stood for 5 centuries crumbled into choking, billowing dust clouds. Churches packed with worshippers collapsed on the faithful praying inside for divine salvation. The earthquake lasted 6 terrifying, eternal minutes that felt like hours to terrified survivors. Survivors stumbled into the streets, bleeding and covered in white limestone dust and debris. The air was thick with powder that burned the lungs and made it nearly impossible to breathe. Then someone smelled smoke drifting on the wind from the destroyed residential neighborhoods. Candles from the All Saints' Day Masses had toppled and ignited the dry wreckage everywhere. Fire spread through the ruins with horrifying speed, consuming everything in its deadly path. Within an hour, walls of orange flame consumed entire neighborhoods from Alfama to distant Chiado. The heat grew so intense that church bells melted in their towers like soft candle wax. People fled in complete panic toward the river, believing it was their only possible escape. Thousands crowded onto the wide marble waterfront plaza, thinking they had finally found safety. At 10:30 in the morning, survivors on the waterfront noticed something terrifying happening offshore. The ocean was pulling back as the Tagus River retreated hundreds of meters from the shore. The muddy bottom and stranded ships were exposed as fish flopped helplessly on the riverbed. A wall of water 30 feet high raced toward Lisbon faster than any galloping horse could run. The tsunami struck the waterfront with the force of divine punishment from angry pagan gods. It swept away the terrified crowds who had gathered there, seeking refuge from the raging fire. It lifted massive ships and smashed them against stone buildings half a mile inland from shore. When the water finally receded, it dragged thousands of bodies into the cold Atlantic depths. By nightfall, on November the 1st, Lisbon was a smoking graveyard beneath a blood-red sky of ash. 85% of the city's buildings lay in complete ruins, destroyed forever that day. The magnificent Ribeira Palace was gone, melted by fire and drowned by the powerful tsunami. Between 40,000 and 60,000 people lay dead, buried in rubble or drowned at sea. Survivors wandered through the wreckage in complete shock, searching for missing family members everywhere. The Lisbon earthquake became the greatest natural disaster in all of European recorded history. But Lisbon absolutely refused to die, as it had refused so many times before through history. Sebastião José de Carvalho e Melo, the Marquis of Pombal, seized control of the city immediately. Within hours, he organized rescue efforts and deployed troops to prevent looting and total chaos. He famously asked his assistants, "What now? We bury the dead and feed the living, then rebuild." Instead of rebuilding the medieval tangle of narrow alleys, he designed a modern grid system. Wide avenues built specifically to withstand future earthquakes replaced the old, chaotic layout. The Baixa district rose from the ashes as Europe's first rationally planned urban center ever built. Today, Lisbon stands proudly as a city of eternal survivors who refuse to surrender to fate. The Baixa still follows Pombal's rational 18th-century grid pattern to this very day. The Belém Tower still watches over the Tagus River mouth, where ships once departed for India. Every November 1st, Portugal observes a moment of silence for the dead and the forever lost. Lisbon rose from Moorish conquest to build a maritime empire on wooden ships and audacity. It drowned in Brazilian gold, burned in uncontrollable flames, and was swallowed by the sea itself. And yet, here it stands today, rebuilt and thriving despite everything history threw at it. Beautiful, battered, scarred, and utterly, defiantly unbreakable through the long centuries. Like and subscribe, because the ground beneath us is always moving, always changing forever.